It all started with a simple errand. One Saturday morning, Samantha asked Ryan to take her car to get washed. She had a work function later in the day and wanted it to look presentable. "Just a quick wash," she said as she handed him the keys. "Thanks, babe." Ryan didn't think much of it. He grabbed a coffee on the way to the car wash and decided to tidy up the car while waiting. As he reached into the glove compartment to pull out some napkins, something unusual caught his eye. A sleek black credit card tucked beneath a receipt. He pulled it out, frowning as he examined it. The card bore the name Darren Cole. Ryan didn't recognize the name. His mind raced. Who was Darren Cole, and why was his credit card in Samantha's car? Ryan waited until Samantha returned from her work function to bring it up. He held the credit card in his hand, his thumb rubbing the embossed lettering. "Hey, Sam," he began as she stepped into the living room. She froze for a moment, her eyes darting to the card in his hand. "What's that?" "You tell me," Ryan said, his tone calm but firm. "I found it in your car." "Who's Darren Cole?" Samantha's expression faltered, but she quickly composed herself. "Oh, that's probably from one of my coworkers. I gave some of them a ride last week after a meeting. They must have dropped it." Ryan studied her face, searching for cracks in her explanation. "So, this coworker didn't notice they lost a credit card?" "I guess not," she replied, her voice a little too casual. "I'll take it back to work on Monday and give it to them." Ryan nodded slowly, slipping the card into his pocket. "Sure, I'll hold on to it until then." Samantha's smile didn't reach her eyes. "Fine." That night, Ryan couldn't sleep. Samantha's explanation had been too quick, too rehearsed. He couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to the story. The next day, while Samantha was out, Ryan did some digging. A quick online search revealed that Darren Cole was not some random coworker. He was a successful business consultant who had recently moved to their city. His social media profiles painted a picture of a wealthy, charismatic man with a taste for luxury. Ryan's stomach churned. Why was his wife connected to this man? He decided to keep his discovery to himself, for now. If there was more to this, he needed proof. Over the next week, Ryan began paying closer attention to Samantha's schedule. He noted the days she claimed to have work meetings or dinner with friends. He checked her phone whenever she left it unattended, scanning for any messages from Darren Cole. One evening, Samantha left for what she called a late client meeting. Ryan waited until her car was out of sight before getting into his own car and following her. She didn't head toward the office. Instead, she drove to an upscale restaurant on the other side of town. Ryan parked discreetly and watched as Samantha stepped out of her car, dressed to the nines. A few minutes later, Darren Cole arrived in a sleek black sports car. Ryan's hands tightened on the steering wheel as he watched them greet each other with a hug that lingered too long. Ryan stayed in his car, his heart pounding as he watched Samantha and Darren enter the restaurant. He debated confronting them then and there but decided against it. Instead, he pulled out his phone and took a photo of them through the windshield. Proof. That's what he needed. When Samantha returned home later that night, Ryan pretended to be asleep. He listened as she moved around the house, her footsteps light but hurried, as though she were trying not to wake him. The next day, while Samantha was at work, Ryan took her laptop and began searching through her emails. What he found confirmed his worst fears. There were dozens of messages between Samantha and Darren, many of them saved in a folder labeled personal. The messages ranged from flirtatious exchanges to detailed plans about a future they were building together. One message, in particular, made Ryan's blood run cold. "I'm saving everything I can. Once I have enough, I'll leave him. We'll finally be free." Ryan sat back in his chair, his mind reeling. Samantha wasn't just cheating. She was planning to leave him, and she was using Darren Cole to fund her escape. Ryan felt a mix of heartbreak and fury as he stared at the screen. Samantha had been playing him for a fool, living a double life while pretending everything was fine. But if she thought she could walk away unscathed, she was wrong. Ryan wasn't going to confront her just yet. Instead, he began crafting a plan to expose her lies and ruin the future she was trying to build. This wasn't going to end the way Samantha thought it would. Ryan's discovery of Samantha's affair and her secret plans to leave him left him seething with a mix of rage and betrayal. However, instead of lashing out immediately, he decided to remain calm, methodical. If Samantha thought she was the one in control, she was wrong. In the days that followed, Ryan played the role of the oblivious husband. He kissed Samantha goodbye in the mornings, asked her about her day, and even cooked dinner for them like he always had. But behind the facade, he was meticulously tracking her every move. Ryan installed a tracking app on her phone and a GPS device in her car. Each time she left the house, he monitored her route and noted where she went. Most trips were routine, work, errands, but there were several nights when her location led to Darren's luxury apartment downtown. He also kept an eye on her spending. Samantha had a private savings account she thought Ryan didn't know about, but he discovered it months earlier while reviewing their joint finances. The account had been steadily growing, fed by small, regular withdrawals from their shared account. Withdrawals she'd always brushed off as necessary expenses. Now he knew the truth. She was funding her escape. Ryan still had Darren Cole's credit card, the one he had found in Samantha's car. He decided it was time to put it to use. Taking care not to leave a trace, he used the card to make a small purchase online. A bouquet of expensive flowers, delivered to Darren's address with a note that read, "I can't stop thinking about you. Love, Samantha." Ryan smirked as he imagined Darren's confusion when he received the flowers. He wasn't just gathering proof of their affair. He was planting seeds of chaos. That Friday, Samantha announced she had a work trip planned for the weekend. "It's a last-minute thing," she said as she packed a small suitcase. "I'll only be gone for 2 nights. Ryan nodded, forcing a smile. "Anything exciting planned? Or is it all business?" "All business," Samantha replied quickly. "Just meetings and presentations." Ryan didn't press her. He kissed her goodbye as she left, then waited until her car was out of sight before grabbing his keys and heading out. Likes the video to support Ryan. Ryan followed Samantha's car from a safe distance, keeping an eye on her location via the GPS tracker. She didn't head toward the office or any hotel booked for business meetings. Instead, she drove straight to Darren's apartment. Ryan parked down the street and watched as Samantha entered the building. His chest tightened as he imagined what was happening inside, but he forced himself to stay calm. He wasn't here to confront them, not yet. Instead, he grabbed his phone and snapped photos of her car parked in front of Darren's building. Ryan spent the next 2 days keeping tabs on Samantha. While she was inside Darren's apartment, he used the time to dig deeper into their plans. Through her emails, he found details about a rental property Samantha and Darren had been looking at, an upscale condo in the heart of the city. Samantha had even inquired about breaking the lease on her and Ryan's house, though she hadn't filed anything official yet. He also discovered a series of bank transfers from Darren to Samantha's private account. The amounts varied, but they added up to thousands of dollars. Darren was clearly funding her new life. Ryan saved every email, every receipt, and every transfer confirmation. When the time came, he would make sure neither of them escaped unscathed. On Sunday evening, Samantha returned home, her demeanor cheerful and relaxed. "Trip went well?" Ryan asked, keeping his tone light. "Yeah," she said, smiling as she set her suitcase down. "Long, but productive." Ryan nodded, pretending to believe her. "Glad to hear it." While Samantha unpacked, Ryan slipped out of the house and drove to Darren's apartment. Using the spare key Samantha had hidden in her car, he let himself into the building and made his way to Darren's door. He didn't go inside, but he left something behind. A small envelope containing printouts of the most incriminating emails he had found, along with a handwritten note. "She's playing both of us. Thought you should know. R." That night, Ryan watched Samantha closely. She seemed oblivious to the chaos brewing around her, laughing at a sitcom on TV and scrolling through her phone. But Ryan's mind was elsewhere. He knew it was only a matter of time before Darren confronted her. Or worse, before Darren realized Ryan was the one pulling the strings. Either way, Ryan was ready. The next afternoon, while Samantha was out, Ryan received a call from an unknown number. "Hello?" he answered, his voice steady. "Who is this?" a furious voice demanded. Ryan smirked. "Darren Cole, I presume? You think this is funny?" Darren snapped. "Who the hell do you think you are, meddling in my business?" "I'm the husband of the woman you've been screwing," Ryan said coldly. "And I'm just getting started." There was a long pause on the other end before Darren spoke again, his tone quieter but no less angry. What do you want? Ryan's grin widened. Oh, you'll find out soon enough. That evening, Samantha came home visibly shaken. She didn't say much during dinner, and her phone buzzed repeatedly with messages she ignored. Ryan pretended not to notice. Everything okay? He asked casually. Yeah, she said quickly, forcing a smile. Just tired. But Ryan knew better. He could see the cracks beginning to form, and he was ready to exploit them. Samantha's once confident demeanor began to crumble as the week progressed. Ryan could see it in the way she avoided eye contact, the way her fingers nervously drummed against the table during meals, and how she constantly checked her phone only to set it down with a frown. Ryan remained composed, playing the role of the loving, oblivious husband. But inside, he relished the small victories, knowing that the walls of Samantha's double life were starting to close in. It wasn't long before Darren made his next move. One evening, as Samantha sat on the couch scrolling through her phone, her expression suddenly shifted from mild boredom to sheer panic. What's wrong? Ryan asked, masking his satisfaction with concern. Nothing, Samantha said quickly, locking her phone and setting it aside. Just work stuff. Ryan raised an eyebrow but didn't push. The truth was, Darren had sent her a series of angry messages. Darren, we need to talk. Now. Darren, who's the guy? I know you've been lying to me. Darren, if you think you're leaving me hanging, think again. Samantha stared at the messages, her heart racing. She had thought she could keep her affair and her plans under control, but everything was spiraling. The following day, Ryan noticed Samantha pacing the living room, her phone clutched tightly in her hand. She made a call, her voice low and urgent. Darren, I can explain, she said, her tone pleading. This is all just a misunderstanding. Ryan listened from the other room, his blood boiling as Samantha tried to salvage her relationship with Darren. Don't call me a liar, she snapped after a pause. I told you, I'm working on it. You just have to trust me. Ryan clenched his fists, taking a deep breath to calm himself. He had known Samantha's betrayal was deep, but hearing it in real time was almost unbearable. Samantha agreed to meet Darren that evening, telling Ryan she was going out to pick up groceries. Ryan knew better. He tracked her location through the GPS in her car and followed her to a quiet park on the edge of town. From his car, he watched as she met Darren by a row of benches. Their conversation was heated from the start. Darren's gestures were sharp and accusatory, while Samantha's were defensive and frantic. Ryan cracked the car window, straining to hear fragments of their argument. You set me up, Darren hissed. That guy, your husband, he's onto us. He sent me proof. I don't know what you're talking about, Samantha said, though her voice wavered. Ryan doesn't know anything. Darren scoffed. You really think I'm that stupid? He's playing you, Samantha. And now you've dragged me into this mess. I didn't drag you into anything, she snapped. You wanted this just as much as I did. Ryan leaned back in his seat, smirking. This was exactly what he wanted, to pit them against each other, to watch their alliance crumble. When Samantha returned home later that night, she looked exhausted. Everything okay? Ryan asked as she walked through the door. Yeah, she said flatly, forcing a weak smile. Just a long day. Ryan nodded but didn't press her. Instead, he poured himself a drink and watched as she retreated to the bedroom, her shoulders slumped. Over the next few days, Samantha became increasingly paranoid. She double-checked the locks on the doors, kept her phone glued to her hand, and even started leaving the house earlier than usual for work. Ryan continued to monitor her every move. He saved the messages she sent to Darren, screenshotting her frantic attempts to smooth things over. One message, in particular, stood out. Samantha, we can't let Ryan ruin this. I'm handling it. Just give me a little more time. Ryan read the message over and over, his anger simmering. She still thought she could control the situation, but she had no idea how far he was willing to go. Ryan decided it was time to escalate his plan. He anonymously mailed copies of Samantha's emails and text exchanges to her workplace, ensuring they would land directly in the hands of her boss. The package included everything: her messages to Darren, the bank transfers, and her inquiries about breaking the lease on their home. Ryan knew Samantha's company had strict policies against personal misconduct affecting professional relationships. If the evidence reached the right people, Samantha's career could be in jeopardy. A week later, Samantha came home looking pale and shaken. "What's wrong?" Ryan asked, feigning concern. "I had a meeting with HR today," she said, her voice trembling. "Someone sent them things. Personal things." "Like what?" Ryan asked, keeping his tone neutral. Samantha hesitated. "Emails. Texts. It's all been taken out of context, but they're investigating anyway." Ryan nodded, hiding his satisfaction. "That sounds serious." "It is," she said, sinking into a chair. "I could lose my job." Ryan offered her a small smile. "I'm sure it'll work out." But deep down, he knew this was only the beginning. Samantha's unraveling was now in full swing. Her perfect facade was cracking under the weight of Ryan's calculated moves, and her desperation to maintain control only pushed her deeper into chaos. Meanwhile, Ryan continued to tighten the noose, watching as her plans for a new life with Darren crumbled around her. Samantha's troubles at work escalated quickly. The emails and text messages Ryan had sent to her employer had painted a damning picture: personal misconduct, questionable financial decisions, and the complete lack of professionalism. During a tense meeting with HR, Samantha tried to explain herself, but her excuses fell flat. "This is unacceptable behavior," her manager said, frowning as she flipped through the printed emails. "Even if these were personal matters, they've now become a distraction to the company. We take these allegations seriously." Samantha felt her stomach drop. "This is all a misunderstanding," she pleaded. "Someone's trying to sabotage me." Her manager's expression softened slightly. "We'll review the situation thoroughly, but for now, you're on unpaid leave until the investigation is complete." The words hit Samantha like a punch to the gut. Unpaid leave meant no income, and with her savings already stretched thin, she couldn't afford to lose her job. At the same time, Darren was pulling away. Their last meeting at the park had left him furious, and Samantha's repeated attempts to contact him were met with curt responses or outright silence. One evening, after hours of unanswered texts and calls, Darren finally replied. "Darren, I'm done, Samantha. This isn't worth the trouble. Don't contact me again." Samantha stared at the message, her hands shaking. Darren had been her ticket to a new life, the man she thought would rescue her from the monotony of her marriage. And now, he was gone. She tried calling him one last time, but the call went straight to voicemail. Ryan wasn't done yet. He had more cards to play, and he intended to leave Samantha with nothing. He reached out to their landlord, pretending to inquire about breaking the lease. "My wife mentioned something about moving," he said casually. "I just want to confirm if she's already started the process." The landlord, unaware of the turmoil brewing behind the scenes, confirmed that Samantha had inquired about early termination but hadn't filed anything official yet. Ryan thanked the landlord and hung up, his mind spinning with ideas. One evening, Samantha finally confronted Ryan. She had been on edge for weeks, and the stress of her unraveling life had reached a breaking point. "Ryan," she said, her voice sharp, "I know you've been snooping. I know you're behind all of this." Ryan leaned back in his chair, his expression calm. "Behind what, exactly?" "Don't play dumb," she snapped. "The emails, the messages, someone sent them to my job. It was you, wasn't it?" Ryan smirked. "Why would I do that, Sam? I'm just your clueless husband, remember?" Her face twisted in anger. "Don't mock me, Ryan. You've ruined everything." "Ruined everything?" he repeated, standing up. "You're the one who ruined everything, Samantha. You were planning to leave me, to start a new life with Darren Cole. Did you really think I wouldn't find out?" Samantha's eyes widened in shock. "How do you?" "Because you're sloppy," Ryan interrupted. "You left a trail and I followed it. You thought you could play me, but now you're the one being played." Samantha's shoulders slumped, and for a moment, she looked defeated. But then her expression hardened. "You're vindictive, Ryan. This isn't about the affair. You just want to hurt me." Ryan's smile was ice cold. "You hurt yourself, Samantha. I'm just making sure you face the consequences." With her job on the line, Darren gone, and her marriage in tatters, Samantha felt like her life was spiraling out of control. She tried to salvage what little she had left, but every move she made seemed to backfire. Her co-workers distanced themselves, whispering behind her back whenever she entered the office. Friends who had once supported her stopped answering her calls. Even her sister, who had always been her confidant, was losing patience. "You made this mess, Sam," her sister said during a tense phone call. "I can't keep bailing you out. I just need a little help," Samantha pleaded. "You've burned too many bridges," her sister replied. "It's time to take responsibility for your actions." Ryan decided it was time to finalize his revenge. He met with a divorce attorney and presented all the evidence he had gathered: the emails, the text messages, the bank transfers, and photos of Samantha with Darren. "This is more than enough to secure a favorable outcome," the attorney said. "You can push for the house, the assets, and even damages if you want to." Ryan nodded. "I want her to feel the weight of what she's done. No leniency." The divorce papers were served to Samantha a week later. She stared at them in disbelief, tears streaming down her face as she realized how thoroughly Ryan had dismantled her life. As the divorce proceedings dragged on, Samantha became more isolated than ever. With no job, no support from Darren, and no allies left, she was forced to rely on her dwindling savings to survive. She moved into a small, run-down apartment on the outskirts of town, far from the life of comfort and stability she had once enjoyed. Meanwhile, Ryan found a sense of closure as the divorce neared its final stages. He kept the house, secured the majority of their shared assets, and watched as Samantha struggled to pick up the pieces of her shattered life. For the first time in months, he felt at peace. Samantha's life had been reduced to rubble. The lavish future she had envisioned with Darren was now nothing more than a cruel fantasy, and her reality was one of loneliness, financial ruin, and shame. Meanwhile, Ryan continued to rebuild his life, though the scars of her betrayal lingered just beneath the surface. The divorce settlement was devastating for Samantha. Ryan's lawyer had expertly used the evidence of her infidelity to secure nearly all their shared assets. Samantha was left with only her personal belongings and a small sum from their joint savings account, an amount that barely covered her mounting expenses. She sold her car to make ends meet and began taking public transportation to the few job interviews she could secure. Each rejection chipped away at what little confidence she had left. Employers weren't interested in someone whose reputation was tainted by personal scandal. Her unpaid leave from work turned into a formal termination after HR concluded their investigation, citing a breach of company policy and conduct unbecoming of a professional. Samantha stared at the termination letter for hours, her hands trembling as the reality of her situation sank in. While Samantha struggled to stay afloat, Ryan found solace in the routines of his new life. He focused on his work, poured himself into hobbies he had neglected during his marriage, and reconnected with old friends. One afternoon, his coworker Jeremy invited him to a casual get-together. "You've been through hell, man," Jeremy said. "You deserve a night to unwind." At the gathering, Ryan met Allison, a friend of Jeremy's wife. She was kind, down-to-earth, and had an easy laugh that immediately put Ryan at ease. As the evening went on, Ryan found himself opening up to her in a way he hadn't expected. "Allison's great," Jeremy said later as they walked to their cars. "You should ask her out." Ryan hesitated. "I don't know if I'm ready for that yet." "Take your time," Jeremy replied. "But don't let the past hold you back forever." With no money, no job, and no support, Samantha hit rock bottom. Her small apartment was sparsely furnished, her pantry nearly empty, and her phone constantly buzzing with overdue payment notifications. One rainy evening, she made the decision to call Ryan. She knew it was a long shot, but she had no one else to turn to. "Ryan," she said when he picked up, her voice shaky. "I know I'm the last person you want to hear from, but I don't know what else to do." There was a long pause on the other end of the line before Ryan spoke. "What do you want, Samantha?" "I need help," she admitted, tears streaming down her face. "I've lost everything, and I need someone to give me a chance." Ryan's voice was cold. "You mean the way you gave me a chance when you were sneaking around with Darren? The way you planned to leave me while smiling in my face every day?" "Ryan, please," she begged. "I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I'm drowning." You made your bed, Samantha, Ryan said firmly. Now you have to lie in it. He hung up, leaving Samantha sobbing in the dark. As time marched on, the gap between Ryan and Samantha widened until their lives were completely unrecognizable from the ones they had shared together. For Ryan, the betrayal became a painful but distant memory, a chapter he had closed. For Samantha, however, the consequences of her choices continued to haunt her, leaving her with nothing but regret and solitude. Ryan's budding friendship with Allison slowly developed into something more. While he was cautious about diving into a new relationship, Allison's patience and understanding gave him the space to heal. One evening, as they walked through a park near Ryan's house, he opened up about his marriage for the first time. Samantha wasn't always like that, he said, his voice tinged with sadness. There was a time when I thought we had it all. Allison squeezed his hand. It sounds like you gave her everything you could, but some people don't value what they have until it's gone. Ryan nodded. I've let go of the anger, but the trust, that's harder to rebuild. Allison smiled softly. Take your time. Trust doesn't come back overnight, but I'm not going anywhere. For the first time in a long while, Ryan felt a flicker of hope. Samantha's situation went from bad to worse. Her financial troubles deepened, and she was eventually evicted from her tiny apartment. She packed her belongings into a few suitcases and spent several nights sleeping in her car. Each night, she thought about Ryan. She wondered if he had found happiness again, if he thought about her, if he hated her. The guilt was unbearable. She had destroyed the only stable relationship she had ever known for a fleeting fantasy, and now she had nothing to show for it. Thank you for listening to the story to the end. Please like, share your thoughts, and subscribe to the channel.